Of the many Jedi killers that exist in the lore, one of the most proficient among them is of course General Grievous. So many aspects were implemented into his construction that made him a terror for any Jedi to face no matter their skill level. Perhaps had his physical cybernetic augmentation been all there was, he wouldn't have been as much of a threat. But it's what came within his very brain that made him such a horrifying threat for even a Jedi Master of Mace Windu's caliber to face. Grievous had the ability to learn and mimic any fighting style just by watching it, and what resulted is one of the most infamous moments in all of the Clone Wars, the time when General Grievous copied Windu's forbidden form, Vaapad. The defining moment is what cemented Grievous as an off-limits opponent for Mace Windu in his mind. But while this piece of lore has been exhaustively referenced before, we wanted to take our own crack at this analysis. Vaapad is so much more than a lightsaber form. It is a state of mind and a stance in the Force. So if Grievous could not touch the Force, why was Windu so afraid of him copying his form? Welcome back to the Archives Lore Junkies. In today's video, we're going to talk about exactly why Windu was so terrified of Grievous, and specifically, his ability to learn Vaapad despite not having the Force. When discussing the fight between Windu and Grievous in the Labyrinth of Evil novel, we'll need to go over what we know about Vaapad as a style first. Vaapad is the custom variant of Form 7 Juyo. Form 7 is known for being chaotic, erratic, and dangerous. The blade work is primarily characterized by bold, direct movements and ferocious offense. It's even more kinetic than Gem So, but less graceful and fluid than Ataru. But what really separates Form 7 as a style is its focus on the emotions and the flow of the Force in combat. Form 7 practitioners were said to maintain a calm exterior, but contained a pressurized storm of emotion within themselves. It was thus considered controversial, and in most cases, was considered off-limits by all Jedi due to its contradictory nature of the Jedi Code. Darth Sidious went as far as to call it a Sith form, the Sith form. But Windu, who acknowledged the darkness that resided within himself, realized that Form 7 was an avenue towards using his own darkness as a tool for the light side. He, along with a colleague by the name of Sora Bulk, would design a variant of Form 7 that they called Vaapad. As an aside, it's unknown whether or not these two were the official creators of the form, as Vaapad is actually referenced as early as the New Sith Wars by the Sith Blade Master Kasim. Unfortunately though, there is not a lot of information about the history of Form 7, but we can only assume that while Vaapad may have existed in some respect, it was Windu and Bulk who were the ones that refined and evolved it into the form that we know today. But with that little discrepancy aside, we know that Windu is the full master of Vaapad, since he is accredited as its creator by the Jedi High Council and by Yoda. In his own words, Vaapad was described as more than a fighting style. It was a state of mind that a Jedi had to use with the penumbra of the Force, the very edge of the shadow of the dark side. It required the user to enjoy the fight, and to relish in the satisfaction of winning. The practitioner of Vaapad would accept the fury of their opponent, transforming themselves into one half of a superconducting loop, with the other half being the power of darkness inherent in their opponent. Essentially, the stronger the dark side was within an enemy, the more effective Form 7 became. And this point right here is where we need to interject. The idea that Vaapad can be boiled down to a mentality and a stance in the Force is actually false. Many make the mistake of believing that Vaapad and Juyo are basically the same, but with different mentalities and alignments. But just like Xian and Gem So, both of these forms being very different and being different alternatives, Juyo and Vaapad have very technical variations as well. At the end of the day, Vaapad is still a combat style with its own unique blade work, sequences, and techniques that are entirely independent from Juyo. If Vaapad were only a state of mind, then it would be classified as a technique, not an entirely different lightsaber form. But this is where the wrench gets thrown in when Windu fought Grievous. If Vaapad has sequences, then it can be copied. Specific moves from Vaapad are just as obscure to us as they are to most Jedi, but we do know of a couple moves. Most specifically, Windu modeled his overall form and movements after a living creature, a creature known as the Vaapad. This animal, named Vaapad, is a predator that possesses several striking tentacles that it uses to attack and ensnare its prey. But when they whip these tentacles so fast, they become a blur of movement, and it becomes impossible to know exactly how many they actually have. It's impossible to count how many tentacles a Vaapad possesses until it's dead, even for a Force sensitive. Using this as his inspiration, Windu was able to move his blade so quickly that the attacks appeared to come from several directions at once with increasing ferocity. When watching him in combat, Anakin described Windu's lightsaber as an oblate sphere of purple fire, containing dozens of blades attacking at every angle. Another known technique was known as the assured strike, wherein the practitioner of Vaapad traded sheer power for near certainty of landing a blow. Overall, Vaapad techniques can be difficult to identify since the form itself looks unconnected, unpolished to any untrained eye. Even Dooku ignorantly labeled Mace Windu's blade work as sloppy, but in reality, it's like the raging rapids of a river, seemingly unconnected, but each move flowing into the next with a deep, hidden precision. We might equate the form to our world's martial art of the drunken monkey. The abnormality in the movements makes it difficult to predict even for Force sensitives, so it's not as though Vaapad is weak, especially if it's not facing a Darksider or utilizing the Force. It's simply imperfect unless the Force is introduced. With all of that established now, we can take a look at why it was so horrifying for someone like Grievous to copy these movements. You see, Grievous was already trained in every single classical style of lightsaber combat by Dooku. He then mixed these forms with his own foundation with the Kaleesh sword fighting style in order to create a hybrid form known only to Grievous. With his 4 cybernetic arms, overpowering strength, and when he felt like it, blinding speed, Grievous was already too much of a match for even the legendary duelists of the Jedi Order. So you can imagine Mace Windu's reaction when Grievous began copying a style known for being unpredictable and giving the illusion of wielding a dozen blades at once. Grievous already had 4 arms, and already used a style that destroyed Jedi intuition. The engagement between Mace and Grievous was extremely brief and nondescript, but Windu immediately disengaged from the droid general when he began to copy his style. Windu described Grievous's movements as imperfect, but quote, passable mimicry of Vaapad. Obviously, there is no way that Grievous could ever truly know the ways of Windu's style without the Force, but you can practice the sequences all day. Without the Force though, and the emotions behind it, the blade work will always be lacking its true potential. Having said all of that though, if the General gained even a modicum of understanding about Vaapad's blade sequences, there may not be a single Jedi that could challenge him. Form 7 in either variation was so ferocious that it was stated to be capable of eviscerating even the defenses of a Surisu master. Form 3 is literally designed to hold off multiple enemies and to form a shell of impenetrable defense in a 1-on-1 duel. But Form 7 was the only thing that countered that, due to its own erratic movement. Windu, along with the rest of the High Council, came to believe that Obi-Wan was the only master that could defeat General Grievous, and part of that was because of his mastery of Form 3. Windu didn't just call him a master of Surisu, he referred to him as the master of Surisu. Kenobi's ability to hold off against multiple lightsabers would serve him well against the General. But if Grievous were to learn Vaapad, that last hope would flutter out of the window, never to be seen again. Windu, being perceptive of this, disengaged with Grievous at the earliest inclination that he could learn this forbidden style. It absolutely shocked him to his core that Grievous was able to mimic various sequences of Vaapad, even if he couldn't touch the Force, something that Windu believed to be impossible prior to this. But one thing was clear, if Grievous ever learned Vaapad, he would be nearly unstoppable in the duel, and that is something that the Jedi Council could not risk. And so that is why Mace Windu was horrified that Grievous could copy his style, even though he could not touch the Force. Think of it like this, if it was said that Mace Windu wielding 1 lightsaber was equivalent to a normal Jedi wielding 12, then if Grievous was operating at the full capacity of his cybernetics and his cybernetic brain, and if he were to mimic the sequences successfully, it would appear as if Grievous was wielding 48 lightsabers at a single time. And that's exactly what scared Windu. Analyzing lightsaber forms is always one of our favorite topics. The intricacies of the 7 styles is one of those pieces of lore that isn't talked about often on screen, but is always playing an integral role in almost all of the duels. The well always goes much deeper than one initially thinks. But tell us, did this clear things up for you about the fight in the books, or perhaps Vaapad in general? If you'd like more breakdowns of this style, then be sure to let us know in the comments below. Until next time, thank you guys for watching and supporting the channel. We'll hopefully see you in the next holocron, and as always, may the Force be with you.